All right, so maybe we could just kind of break the ice a little bit with some brief introductions, and then I can get into my questions. So my name's Keith Stratton. I'm working for the Canadian League of Composers this summer as the audiovisual storyteller. It's kind of the first time we're doing this. And this is part of a Signal Boost Stories, in which we're highlighting different organizations, different classical new music organizations across Canada that are doing that are aligned with our values. I'm from Prince Edward Island. Initially, I went to Acadia and then McGill, and now I'm in Toronto. And yeah, I've been here since 2018. I compose and I play a bit of guitar and drums as well. And so I'm kind of part of the Toronto new music scene a little bit, as well as playing some rock bands around here. Yeah, maybe I can go to Amanda next. Maybe just kind of briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name's Amanda Smith, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm also based in Toronto. I actually, I'm not sure how far back you want to go, but yeah, I started my musical endeavors, I guess, professional journey in Waterloo, and really dove into new music over there, starting in my undergrad and getting exposed into the new music kind of realm through that part of my life, and then moved to Toronto and founded Fawn and met Adam. And so, yeah, in addition to being the artistic director of Fawn, I'm also a freelance stage director. I specialize in, let's say, it's not exclusively opera, but music-centered, classical music-centered directing. That also extends over to more of the experimental side of things. So.
Awesome.
I also work for an organization called the AFC, and that provides various supports to entertainment professionals. So really touching different sides of the industry.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Adam?
Right. So yeah, my name is Adam Scime. I'm a composer, performer, living in Toronto. Yeah, so I'm the music director of Fawn. I do a bit of music directing as a freelancer around town as well, with organizations like Games and other groups. So a little bit of everything, some education outreach, a little bit of academia. But yeah, Amanda and I met years ago for the Rob Ford opera. And it was funny because we hadn't actually met yet. We were only talking over email, but during that performance, it was a big audience in the theater at U of T, and it just so happened that Amanda, just by coincidence, sat next to my dad, who was in the audience, which is so funny. But then we met, and yeah, and Amanda was starting this company, Fawn, and I was immediately attracted because it was just doing something so different. It felt different even from the beginning to me, because I think the first concert I went to was on this art gallery that I don't think is there anymore on Queen Street. And it just felt awesome. And I became little bit by little bits more involved with the organization, and eventually writing an opera, and now becoming music director. So it's just been a very fun ride, and all the projects we do are extremely meaningful and impactful. And so it's just been wonderful to be a part of Amanda's vision and artistic growth with this company.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Adam. And that, yeah, you're already getting into kind of the origins of Fawn, which is one of my questions. So that was sort of how you linked up with Amanda. But Amanda, coming from Waterloo, were there other organizations where you're like, oh, I want to do something like that, or was it really something kind of from the ground up? What was your experience starting that out yourself?
So I guess it's kind of multi-pronged as to why I started Fawn. I didn't move to Toronto to start Fawn, just to preface that. I actually, just to go back to Adam's story, I actually I graduated in music, and during my time, I became a director. I knew I was more interested in like doing the visual realization of music. And directing was kind of my pathway toward that. And then when I came to Toronto, I just wanted to direct new works. I was already very interested in new music, largely because I think it's a big part of the culture at Laurier. There's a lot of new music people coming from Laurier. New music concerts, not new music concerts, but there were concerts of new music
Right.
every like Wednesday or every other Wednesday at Laurier. And I was a stage technician. I often worked those. A lot of my friends were composers. It aligned more with like the kind of music that I was into, which was like, I don't know, electronic music, but also like hardcore, and just like, it just seemed to link more with the kind of music that I listened to that was non-classical. And so I knew that that's what I wanted. And when I got to Toronto, I sent an email to, I guess it was one of Adam's advisors or something. I'm not sure, but I sent an email to one of the composition professors and was like, I would like to direct some new works. Do you have any composers who want to compose opera that want a director? Like, I'm a young director and looking to collaborate. And Adam was one of the first, I think maybe the first person to answer me. And that's, Adam, I don't know if you remember, but that's why you invited me to the opera. That's why I went. So just to add, that was a very, very long time ago. So I don't know, 10 years ago?
I think it was 2011.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I actually started Fawn after that. At that time, when we first met, I didn't know what I was, like how I was gonna develop this career that I wanted, that I didn't really see a pathway toward. And something I found really interesting is like, everyone kept talking about classical music is dying, and people still say that. And I just was not very interested in what that version of classical music was. And I just saw the potential for new music and really wanted to find a way to access that. But I also found it interesting how, like, even though I perceived new music as being very much aligned with these other non-classical, let's call them still more art forward non-classical musics, I always was wondering, like, well, why are young people going to those kinds of things and not new music concerts? Why are people, because like I would say new music is like, new music concert is kind of like going to an art exhibit opening. You see a premiere and you're going to an art gallery. And I just didn't understand why we didn't have the same culture as that. A lot of my friends are from the visual art world, and especially at that point, like a lot of my friends were even more so then from the visual art world. I didn't really have a lot of friends in the classical music world at that point. It was before I went to school. It was before I went to U of T. It was before I really met people here. And I saw like how rich the social and creative dialogue was around these like very professional exhibits. And I was just like, why can't we have that? So that's really what led me to start Fawn. I wanted to find a way to carve out the kind of career that I wanted. I wanted to find a way to work with the kind of people that were exciting to me, the kind of work that was exciting to me. And I really felt like there was a way for us to attract the kind of people who go to those shows, rather than just like trying to make our shows hip, Like, how about instead we find ways to kind of bring the environments together? And the meaning of that kind of changed, like how to do that has changed. You know, it's been 11, 10 years. I think it's 10 years. Like we're approaching our 10th anniversary this coming season. I think our inaugural performance was about now 10 years ago, which Adam had a piece in. Yeah, that the way that we approach that question has definitely evolved, and I've learned a lot about what is interdisciplinary, what is multidisciplinary, and what do people get excited by, what do we get excited by through that process. But the question has remained the same, and that's sort of that remains the impetus behind the things that we do. I mean, the audiences that we look to cultivate are not exclusively classical music audiences. You know, we feel like if you can create environments that feel inviting and exciting for people who go to these other art forms that have a similar ethos, then, you know, people who are in the new music and classical worlds who are also interested in that will also go. But, you know, you don't have to, we're not looking to exclude anyone. We're just trying to open it up to what we think to people who have natural alignments.
Great. Cool. Yeah, thank you. Lots of thoughts about audience, you know, then versus now. Adam, do you have anything kind of to add on any of those points in terms of how the audience has changed and the intent behind what, you know, who you're looking to make music for?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, who are we making music for? I mean, as Amanda said, I think that changes over the years depending on what the project is, and I think it also changes with the needs of like the artists we're working with and how projects change and morph even within the confines of one project. Who or what the art is for can change, and it's sort of not up to us in some cases. You know, it just, we tried to set up a situation where collaborators can come together and play and sing and as a group and make music as a group, and then that project becomes what it needs to become. I think the Pandora project was very much that, and maybe when that project was being dreamed up in just a conversation or in a grant, and then it becomes this other thing 2 years later. And so, and I think you need to be really open to that. I think if you're not, it's, you know, it will fail miserably. And I think that's up to surrounding yourself with good collaborators, and listening to your collaborators too, and not thinking about collaboration too narrowly. Not thinking of collaboration as, you know, some sort of skill that you can learn overnight, but something that is cultivated over a period of time with other people and learning from other people, and then discoveries emerge out of that as to who or what this art is for. Right.
Yeah, I think that certainly resonates with me, and I mean a lot of other groups I've been talking about too. So much of it is kind of nurturing those relationships, having things come organically rather than sort of sticking people in a room and saying like, make beautiful, relevant art. It's like, you know, yeah. I mean, people can do their best, and, you know, there's always chance and luck in there, but these kind of long-term musical artistic relationships, you know, yeah.
I will say that there has been a lot of strategy around audience cultivation, and I would say that it's been maybe not so traditional, and it's essentially like our strategy has been to play the long game of trying to cultivate a very organic audience. As I said, like a lot of people who are interested in niche, not just music, but niche art. And so that is one of the benefits of doing a lot of multi and interdisciplinary work. Our first show was multidisciplinary. And the idea of, and as I said before, like why is the art world bringing in young people and not us? So I went in with that in mind. And the idea is like, as we continue to work with these other disciplines, we're bringing in their audiences, and we're also getting to know their audiences, and they're getting to know us. And it's not that we're making work for them, we're making work with people that they trust, and we're learning from them, as I said. And that continues on with the work that we do going forward. So, you know, if they like what we do, they come to our next show, and our audiences just get bigger and bigger and bigger with let's say a pretty diverse audience of people who have different disciplinary interests. So it really has been like the long game.
Cool.
You know?
Great. Now, one question, you know, for each of you, speaking about opera, you know, as in terms of the history and the term, I mean, you both have careers full of opera. There's a lot when I, you know, look at Fawn's programming. There's a lot I could speak to in terms of what you're changing, you know, in terms of the instrumentation, the style, the audience. But what about sort of the opposite question? You know, what is it that you're keeping? So, you know, maybe my question can be in two parts. What is it that attracted you to opera so much, that you love about it, and that through these changing experiences, through these different presentations, that you actually want to keep? You know, what are the things from opera's history that you look to actually preserve, even as you change the presentation? Maybe I'll go with Adam first on this one.
Well, I think something that we keep. I think we want to tell a compelling story through theater and music, and provide a compelling experience for an audience that is some sort of commentary of what it means to be alive, like all good art should do, I think. So we try to do that. And I think that when audience members were attending opera back in, you know, Mozart's time or Wagner's time or anything like this, they really were blown away by the experience, probably. Whether it was some sort of new contraption they invented to dazzle the audience with like stage design, or just advancements in music and drama. I think that's something that we try to keep. But I think there's also things that we try to really do away with as well. I think there's probably more that we don't keep in terms of, you know, classical modes of concert presentation. I think, you know, for me as an audience member, I'm just bored. I'm just really bored with the whole thing. And you have this conductor that walks out. And, there's bows. You know, it's some of that stuff is all still very important. I think it's important to acknowledge the artist in some way. But yeah. So yeah, I think there's some things worth keeping for sure. But then there's definitely elements of tradition that just need to go away.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's like a refreshing thing to think of, like the classic operas, but at that time they were maybe just as innovative in different ways as current, you know, new music is. That was the new music of its time, just because we still, yeah. Amanda, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think this is an interesting question, because we get a lot of questioning of like, is this opera when we put things up? And I always find that question to be odd. But you know, people want to have a definition. I just personally feel like the definition is a lot more broad than what it's allowed to have quite often. And so something that we've been doing, you know, in our interdisciplinary work is kind of seeing what can it become when we collaborate with other people. Something that is consistent is that, you know, we are classically trained artists. So we bring that classical lens, but I mean, classical is so broad, right? You got like experimental classical, like my foundation came from, you know, co-creating work within like classical improv settings. So, you know, classical improv, you have traditional classical folk sometimes being like, is this music? You know, so I find that also kind of interesting. You know, what is music to you versus what is music to me? And that's the same thing when it comes to opera. I do think that there is some intangible element that does make something opera, but I don't know if we can hammer that down into a sentence. You know, so something that is often consistent is that, you know, we like to work with classical singers. We do like to work with a lot of classical singers who have a wide range of extended techniques, depending on the piece. We do a lot of devising and co-creating. So having those extended techniques expand the vocabulary. And so again, like some people might wonder, oh, well, if no one's singing operatically, then is it opera? But I think that the work that we do tends to kind of still, in our minds, land in that zone. And we might use like different sounds and vocabulary, but it always kind of mixes in with a classical sound. It might just not be like completely always sounding familiar in the classical way. I mean, and when I say that, I also recognize that like there's a very vast experimental repertoire that, you know, I'm not saying that we're going to be doing things that are different from that. But if we're asking about opera, opera tends to have like the connotation of that more traditional definition. So, you know, we're really trying to be consistent with making sure that we do call the work that is opera. We don't exclusively do opera, but the work that we view as opera, even if it's, you know, people question whether it is, like it is to us. And at the end of the day, I think that that's the most important part.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yep, sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. Yeah, I don't even think we think about it really. You know, this project must adopt or contain these X, Y, and Z elements, or else it's not an opera. We don't even think about it. I think we just think about creating a really great experience. And just a little anecdote, I remember going to see Barbara Monk-Feldman's opera at the COC a number of years ago. And the main topic of conversation was, is this an opera? It's not an opera, and therefore I hate it. It was a very bizarre reaction, but it was a very common reaction, and it made me think a lot, and I liked it. And I think that's all that should matter, really. You know, does it belong in this grand opera house? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And you know, people shouldn't be afraid to take risks and also consume as an audience member risk-taking environments presented by an organization like the Canadian Opera Company. It's totally fine. And so it was sort of weird to me that was the conversation. I guess, you know, if you really have to think about it, people are afraid of change or something they're not used to or comfortable with, going to a large opera house like that. But it kind of made me chuckle a little bit, and also excited because you know, it creates a little bit of controversy. Not that we try to create controversy, but that conversation certainly exists, but we don't think about it. We just want to create an amazing experience for people that come.
Yeah, there's like it's a music forward narrative, but that narrative doesn't have to be explicit. So that can really add to the confusion of the definition sometimes, but I think that's also like something we get really excited about.
Right. And that's that actually will lead well to another question, but I just a quick thought on what you both said about that word opera. I mean, I definitely had a period of time when I was studying music where I was like, we have to stop talking about genre. Like, we just need to get rid of all the genre and style labels, because like you said, coming out of a brilliant show and then having people kind of having these arguments about, was it that or not? I'm like, but so I was, for a while I was like, we shouldn't use these terms at all, whatever. But also there's the flip of it, which is I believe when you use one of those labels or one of those genre descriptors, you're like you're putting what you're doing in a grid, and that itself can have narrative or artistic power. I mean, even like, say a piece of chamber music. If someone said this is a jazz concert and it was the exact same piece, that would inform our listening in a different way, I think, or hip hop. So hip hop or electronic or whatever it is. So I think from the artist to say this is within this style, and then even blowing that style up as much as you want, I think that can be such a positive artistic tool in a sense. So I can see both ways. Personally,
It kind of connects to um, uh, something that a lot of dancers have talked about with me, and it's referenced like when I've talked about this exact thing, because this is something that's, we talk about a lot because it's questioned a lot in our work. Um, but in dance, dance is dance, right? But there's different kinds of dance. So you got ballet, but even within ballet, you have all these different kinds of ballet. You got contemporary dance. You have, yeah, and all contemporary dance can also look in all these different ways. And why not? Why can't opera have that? Opera is a genre that can have many subgenres, and those subgenres don't necessarily have to disqualify another. So that's kind of, I think, how we view it. Like, opera is an umbrella, and all these different subgenres can kind of still, it's like a tree, right? Like we spiderweb out from, like, the family tree. And it's just like all music does that. We have all these like niches within niches, and so it's not that we're like explicitly trying to develop niches within niches, but like if it goes in that direction, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. We've still started from the same path, and we just end up that way.
cool. Yeah, awesome. So another thing that you mentioned there was kind of tying into another question: interpretation of narrative. I mean, talking about operas having narratives, talking about storytelling. Yeah, just the idea of the composer's intent versus the individual interpretation of the audience. Maybe both of you, as programmers and as artists, what do you, when you're balancing that, I guess in like you're saying, more implicit narratives, is it, are you looking to create opportunities for different interpretations, or is it sort of, this is my intent and I'm interested to see what anyone else would think? Maybe it's a little bit of a broad question. Maybe I'll just go back to Adam. Yeah, what do you think of composer intent versus audience interpretation?
Um, well, I'm not sure if they're reconcilable because in any way, because I don't think that you should ever attempt to gauge an audience experience. I mean, they're going to interpret the art whatever way they choose, and that's the way it should be. So even if our intentions are one way, it's totally fine if someone receives a completely different interpretation. I mean, I don't think that's something we should be preoccupied with. But you certainly think about it. I think anyone thinks about it, whether you're outside of opera or in any type of artistic field. You think about it. So it's not that we don't think about it, but I don't think I don't think it would, any preoccupation with that consideration would change anything that we do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, you're just looking to invite in it's a welcome invitation for those. I mean, and that as an audience member too, I mean, that's part of the fun of it, is coming away with how does that relate to me and my personal experience?
Yeah, and that's actually a kind of a fun thing. And if you're presenting art in any way, to learn of people, how people experience that art, how the listening experience went, and it's kind of a fun thing to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, Amanda, any thoughts on that?
I mean, that particular question and the bridge between audience and composer, I mean, that's a large part of what my role is as a director. Like it's specifically, like I start with the composer, and then a large part of my role is to bridge it over to the audience. So, you know, it's especially particularly with opera. I mean, with concert music, you can kind of guide the audience with the environment that you create. And, you know, that's something that we do like to do, like set an environment for a piece from the big time that they walk in, you know, so we're kind of setting the tone. But there's a lot more individual experience for the audience member than like an opera per se, where the piece starts with the composition, and, you know, that composition might also be the composer interpreting other explorations that a group of people have had, which is something that we have been exploring for many years, devising. So, but once you have like the composition itself, there's still going to be a team of people, a cast of people. You know, you got the creative team, you got the director, you have the cast members, you have the ensemble, the instrumental ensemble, the music director, and then you have the audience, right? So it would be difficult for there to be one interpretation, I think, at any point, because you're going to have it filtered through so many different people, and hopefully you create a work that ends up morphing and being different from the original. This is my personal opinion. You know, hopefully you have a piece that ends up being something that wouldn't have existed if just one person created it on their own. And again, like, as you said, I think, Adam, you were saying that like different audience members might have different interpretations. So, you know, no matter what, you can't ultimately control it unless you're like, this is my shoe, you know, and that's so boring. But, but, you know, obviously, if you wanted to do something like that, you could. But I don't think that that's our goal, really. Like, I do think having varying experiences as audience members are, it's always interesting to see what people come away with. You know, you do your best to kind of guide them, but at the end of the day, you never know how they're going to read it, and then they might tell you, and then if you do it again, that might inform you as well. So, you know, I think that, like, if we're kind of viewing these collaborations as being like living, and these documents as being sort of living documents, that like once they're off the page, they can also become, they're interpretable, you know?
Right.
The meanings can live on and continue to shift. So, I mean, obviously that's my perspective as a stage director, and that's like, my role is to interpret and change interpretations, and I'm not particularly interested in only interpreting based on what history has told us, how history has told us to interpret it. I mean, if that's the direction that your instincts go, then that's one thing. But like, you know, there's just so many ways in which just something can, there's so many different meanings that can come from, you know, a single word or a single chord to different people. So
it seems like that at least for you is like, that's the play of it, is those multiple interpretations, and that filtering through all those different voices is not like you're cracking down on people saying you're wrong, this is not what it means.
Yeah,
I mean,
and hopefully you do it collaboratively. I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's different when a composer is no longer with us or not able to collaborate actively, but when you're working with living composers, you know, hopefully there can be a dialogue, and that's why workshopping is really great. You know, then you can kind of say like, this is what I'm hearing from such and such section. Like, does that resonate with you? Oh, I never thought about that, you know?
Yeah.
And then you might both talk about what that means, and maybe together through your separate perspectives, you arrive at something totally different, and ends up being even better than both of your initial ideas.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Really, really collaborative. I'd like to just move into a few different topics now, specifically about this work, Nature Interrupted by Dame Cook, that the Fawn did in collaboration with the CLC. I just had one or two questions about this. I mean, I was reading about it. I was watching it, and I was reading about it. It seemed like this was a piece that sort of resulted out of the pandemic, and so that's obviously. I mean, every musician and festival has sort of adapted in a different way. I was just wondering, how that all came about. How did you arrive? How did the artists arrive on that? Because it was supposed to be something live, and then it went there. So what was that? What was that journey like?
So it's actually the piece itself is a collaboration between Dame Cook and Hollis Bullock. Mm-hmm. And so the Dame wrote an album, and Hollis did all of the video. And the two of them they created in tandem quite a bit. So so I would say that it's both of their pieces there, and it was presented as like a video album launch. It's really their piece that yes, we did ask them to make something, but it was their idea of what they wanted to make. We just wanted it to be able to live online, and it actually came from originally we were supposed to do another Convergence Theory, and that was supposed to be a live show. And we had a Convergence Theory concert series that was in 2019, 2020. So we had two shows, one in November and another one in January, and we're supposed to have our final one in March. And that was supposed to feature Dame Cook, who was going to be collaborating with Drift Note, and they were going to create like a live performance with electronics. And then Maxime Corbeil-Perron was also to create. He already had an AV presentation, and we were working with Victory Social Club to create this like immersive projection mapped space. It was going to be very cool. It's a bummer that we couldn't have done it, but obviously the pandemic happened and we canceled the show. And we really wanted to honor our contracts with them, with the artists who were involved. So we essentially said, we'd like to do a video version. And so Maxime, Drift Note, and Dame Cook were the three different like artists that we said we'd like to do something with. And we, to kind of support them a little bit more, we said we can provide a little bit more. We're not like renting all these different equipments. And so we provided a little bit more of support. And it was our way of trying to make sure we weren't like ripping the rug out from under people. And we kind of just like let them kind of guide what it would be.
Yeah. So
that's really what it was. I think Dame really wanted to make an album with their partner, and we were like, great, we'll support that. So it sounds very simple, but that was really what it was. We just wanted to make sure that we were staying in the ethos of our concert series and letting them guide the kind of work that we know, like we're already familiar with them. So we just trusted what they wanted to make.
Yeah. I mean, on one hand, it seems simple, but it does stand out. The idea of having an album with video accompaniment and having that be the thing that goes online. I feel like everyone's kind of, some people have gone the live streaming route. Oh, we're gonna, and there's so many different. Oh, it's gonna be a stage performance, but we're gonna make it into a film. No, it's gonna be a stage performance. We're gonna make it live. But I like the flexibility of just completely opening that back up and actually having something in a different medium entirely,
Well,
rather than have yeah.
all of those artists are also like, they're all electronic artists. They're all, I think for the most part, they either are or have, in Dame's scenario, intimate collaborations with media artists. So it kind of lent itself to doing digital work. So we had Dame Cook's piece, and that was a video album, as you said. And then we had Drift Notes piece, which was a 360 video modular electronic set for like half an hour. And you take your iPad and look around, and it was like this, I thought, a very cool experience of like hearing this like ambient electronics with this like 3D rendered animation design environment that Omar created. That was a show. And with Maxine's show, we actually, it actually lived, like the show that we were going to do live lived well on a screen. So we just said, we will mail you 3D glasses so you can have the 3D experience at home. And we did. We mailed people 3D glasses, and
That's
people
awesome.
just sat on their sofas and had a 3D, felt very techno, like experimental techno, experimental music experience on their sofa. So, I mean, the kind of work that concert series lent itself to just made sense for the digital environment.
Sure, yeah. That's awesome. Adam, do you have any thoughts on these pieces and the adaptations to the pandemic in that sense?
You're on.
I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry.
All good.
Classic. It's my first time on Zoom. No. That's. I think Amanda encapsulates it really well. But the funny thing is, I remember we ordered all of these 3D glasses, and like we got to put Fawn stickers on them. I thought that was. We sat in a park and put all these stickers on these Fawn branded stickers on the side of. They worked well. They worked really well. So that was fun for me. But no, I thought those pieces were really compelling, and everyone was trying to adapt in different ways. And I'm glad that Fawn was able to put out some stuff and support some artists during that time.
That's awesome.
I still have so many of them. So it kind of just says that we have to do more.
Yep, that's
3D glasses.
Yeah. do you think like when the Met does their streamed, like they should do 3D opera streams to like the theaters?
Yeah, 3D.
The dawn of 3D opera. It's gonna catch on. That's awesome. Another thing I noticed with a piece by Damon Hollis, that instead of a oh my gosh, I'm forgetting my words here. It was instead of paying Fawn for it, it's a suggested donation to one of two organizations, the AFC or Friends of Ruby. And in this sense, it's sort of this tying of musical presentation and social action, in my mind. And I was wondering if either of you had thoughts on that in terms of the integration of social action in these music experiences. Of course, this is only one example.
Yeah, I would say in this particular example, maybe I'll just speak broadly in terms of social action in general. Like when we create work, it's not in our mandate to do these things, and that shouldn't matter. Our mandate is really to create new and experimental works, and share that, particularly works that are created with those based in Canada. So, that's very broad. And so everything that we do is really like centering what our personal instincts are, and what our, I guess, like when it comes to ethics, what our personal ethics are. And at that time, just to give context, obviously it was the pandemic. The majority of our industry, the entertainment industry, lost their job, and that lasted for quite a while. And then also Black Lives Matters happened, and it's not just those two incidences. I mean, like, there was so much racism that was like coming to light as a result of the pandemic, and we just started to see, I should reframe that, we didn't just start, but I think in a very public outcry, there became priorities as to what needed to be supported, and we didn't have overhead. We didn't need that support. I mean, obviously, it's nice to get donations, but we didn't need them at the time, and so we just thought, who needs this support, even if it's small, and maybe it's not even just financial, like even just to tell people that these things exist, right? So the AFC we chose two charities because they kind of reflected different priorities of ours. So the AFC reflected our priority of supporting a supporter of entertainment professionals. And as I said before, I actually work for them, so I specifically know the kind of role that this organization has played in helping to support entertainment professionals who were, unable to pay their rent, people who were scared of being unable to pay their mortgage or their hydro or eat. So that's what that organization did in our minds, of like, how can we be a part of supporting our industry, in addition to making sure that these particular artists continued to have the work that we promised them, and maybe a little bit more. In addition to that, what else can we do? So that was like a way for us to tell people that the AFC existed in case that they needed it, but also do our part in contributing to that organization. The other one is Friends of Ruby, and they have a very, very profound drop-in for queer youth, and they have a drop-in for BIPOC queer youth, and they also, during that time, they were also, I think they just launched, or they're about to reveal their they have like a residence now. So there's a lot of unhoused queer youth, and this organization provides a space for people who really need it. And so we really liked that was an intersection of both like supporting young people who identify as LGBTQIA, and also people of color who are in that group as well, because there's additional marginalization for those groups. So that was kind of our rationale. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good to know about these organizations and everything. Yeah. Adam, do you have any thoughts on these moves, or even just the ideas of integrating social action in new music in general?
You have to learn. you really have to learn. And I think, as Amanda said, it's not really our mission to present social justice art or anything like that, but we definitely find ourselves in that realm from time to time. We just did a workshop of a new opera by Anna Hossman that centers around solitary confinement, and Amanda set up this incredible workshop where there were lectures by experts in the field, and it really became a meaningful experience for everyone involved. It was quite special. And in those situations, in the process of learning, you have an enormous respect for your collaborators that have had a lived experience. whatever that might be. And an openness to experimenting in new ways, openness to failing as someone who doesn't have that lived experience in that learning process. But also an extreme sensitivity to how your own actions can affect the collective effort and the project's outcome. And so safe spaces certainly aren't just about sexual harassment and stuff like this, although that's so important. It's also just about if you are inviting artists in who have a lived experience, or if you're presenting art that does have a social justice aspect to it, that it's that's included in the safe space consideration, how you conduct yourself and how you learn, and all of that. So that's certainly something that we think is extremely important when we do approach that element in the art making process.
I think it's important also to recognize, like, although we're small, we've still created a platform. It's still, it's a larger platform than if either one of us individually were to say anything. So it's a way for, another thing is like, sharing this platform with other organizations that, it's not like we have a larger platform than them, but it's to say that we become like an alternative access point for people to access organizations that we support, or if there are messages that we think are important, such as, the realities of solitary confinement in Canada. We're not going to say, we're going to change things because we're one organization, but we have a platform and we have a responsibility to make sure that we use that platform in a way that has meaning. So that really drives us forward a lot of the time. I don't know if saying, like, commenting on, how did you phrase it? It was like social justice or
social action, like having a call to act. Yeah, having a call to action that's somehow tied to the art experience, I guess.
I just hope that people can recognize that, whatever medium that they're working in, if they have a platform, that is an opportunity and a responsibility. So at all times, and you might not at all times do it exactly the way that, maybe 10 years from now, or 1 year from now, or 3 months from now, when you've done more learning, maybe you wouldn't do it that way again. But no matter what, with the resources and knowledge that you have at that moment, it really is your responsibility to do what you can to the best of your ability. And rather than it just being about the art, like, art isn't a silo. Art is a part of a community. And, this is a way for us to support our community and be a part of our community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we're just running out of time here, but maybe just as a brief closer, maybe for both of you, what's next for Fawn in terms of, what are you hoping for? What are some things you're looking forward to? And, based on some of the things we're talking about, what changes and improvements and new things are you excited about this year? Go for it.
Changes and improvements. That's also a constant thing, right? But things that we're really looking forward to, as Adam was saying, we just did a workshop of Anna Hossman's. Anna wrote this, the libretto of a piece called Cells of Wind, and the score for Cells of Wind, and we're going to be working toward producing that. So that's going to take some time. We're also working toward workshopping 2 other pieces that are at various stages of development. One of them is called Belladonna, and we started the exploration of that, 4 years ago, and it's taken quite some time for us to get that off the ground. And we're going to be moving that forward, and we're really excited about that. And another piece that has no name yet, and it will be a devising piece with David James Brock and Joseph Glazer. And really, like, a lot of the work that we're doing right now is development work. It is, it's still a pandemic. We're still small, and we want to really take this as an opportunity to grow work and really investigate process, and grow work in a collaborative and organic way that just takes time. And so we're investing in those kinds of development projects as opposed to doing productions right away.
Cool. Awesome. Adam, same thing. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, and we're also doing L'Homme et le Ciel.
Oh, L'Homme et le Ciel! Sorry, Adam.
And no, that's okay. We got a big we got a big Digital Now grant to do that. So that's an opera that I wrote for Fawn, which is, I think, really meaningful for us, because that I think it put us. It allowed the organization to grow in a big way. It was kind of our first large-ish production, well, large for us at the time, and it was quite grassroots. We were calling a lot of favors, and that type of thing. And so now that we can throw a bunch of money at that project and do a recording and have a document of that as a very meaningful stage in the organization's history, I think is really great. So I'm really looking forward to that, even though it's my own piece, but I think it's meaningful, even if it wasn't my opera. It's a really meaningful piece for Fawn. So I'm really looking forward to that.
We've been wanting to remount that show for so long, because we were all pretty young in our creative development when we put it up. And as Adam was saying, we pulled a lot of favors, and now that we're a more, I feel like we're like a teenager right now. We're like a young adult company. And now that we're more experienced, it'll be really exciting to see where it goes. But I don't know, Adam, if you said what exactly we're doing, but I'll just say, I don't think you did.
No.
So we're creating a 3D animated movie of L'Homme et le Ciel.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Yeah. So that's going to be a major project for us this year. And we won't be able to premiere it this year because it's going to be in development. But we're working with Drift Note as the animator and creative director. I'm directing it, and I don't know if that's the right title anymore, director of photography, or these are sort of different disciplines than what we normally work in. And Adam will be the music director and composer.
Wonderful.
So we're excited. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, that's great. Is that going to be is that project going to be online or just in person, or maybe both?
Probably both.
Right, because people already have their 3D glasses, so they're going to be ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm sure they kept it. I'm sure they all kept it.
When I say 3D, I mean 3D animation. So we're going to do
right. Oh, I see.
It'll be motion capture. We'll do mocap for their faces and motion capture with the performers, and they'll be it's not actually going to be 3D pop out at you. It's 3D animation.
Great. I got you. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's no.
We're going to find ways to talk about it. In an elevator pitch. We're just not quite there yet.
Sure. Well, that's what it's all about. It's just developing it and see where it goes. And yeah, I can just say it's so cool, especially working with all these digital mediums and the idea of motion capture and all of that. Why not? Again, just like you said, the old classic operas were innovative at their time, using the new tools of their trade, impressing, engaging people. Why not do that with everything that we can access now?
100%.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good note to leave it on. But thank you both so much. I'm going to stop recording.